So we are talking about MYTHICA, the GODSLAYER, which is the final entry into this somewhat long-running series, and this one directed by John Lyde. Now, I actually quite liked the last MYTHICA series, but as a whole, I thought this series was not up to par, to be quite honest. This one's by Arrowstorm Entertainment, who are an independent film company who tend to make a lot of fantasy and sci-fi films. They've done some pretty good stuff, but this MYTHICA series, I feel, has been a little lackluster. Now, the first thing I would say about this film is if you are new to this series, you're going to find it very hard to kind of jump into this, because it kind of starts almost straight away. And even me, having watched the film, I find myself going, what's happening again? So basically, it focuses on four heroes. And right from the beginning of the film, they're in two different pairs, in two different locations. We have one pair kind of fighting off the hordes of zombies sent by the Lich King to attack this kind of settlement, whilst we have our kind of main character, Marek, who is this kind of female necromancer, and this kind of half-elf guy trying to find a way to stop the Lich King himself. So that's pretty much your plot here. What did I like about MYTHICA, the GODSLAYER? I've got to say, I thought some of the set design here and the photography was very good. It has a kind of Skyrim feel to it. A lot of the landscapes kind of like a snowy background, and it really did remind me of Skyrim, and also kind of Winterfell and that from Game of Thrones. But some of the kind of the landscapes here are all pretty good. And the same can be said about the kind of, I would say, the set design and the kind of the costumes and everything all look pretty decent. I know it's all kind of handmade by those guys, but they've done a good job in making that. I'd also have to say this is the film you see the most of the big bad guy, Zarlok I think he's called, and he is channeling Star Wars big time in this movie. He's a kind of mix between the Emperor and Darth Vader, and he's chewing up the scenery, and he gets kind of, I guess, the most amount of lines and kind of screen time here, and he's having fun doing so, and he comes across as a pretty decent scene-stealing villain, if you ask me. So I kind of quite enjoyed his scenes, although they are quite hammy. But although I kind of quite liked the last film in this series, this one I feel goes back to the standards of the original movies, and even beyond that, I would say at least those films that had some kind of reasonable set piece in it, some kind of big finale or some kind of memorable scene. This one doesn't. I was wondering if they're running out of money a little bit at this point, because there's nothing really spectacular that happens. There's actually a little bit lighter on special effects here as well. We have this kind of this zombie attack, and it just seems quite dull, to be honest. They usually just got people with a little bit of dirt in their face, a little bit of prosthetics here and there, but ultimately it's a little bit dull. And there's no kind of spectacular thing that happens. There's no massive set piece. Even the kind of the final conflict, which you can probably expect, is a little lackluster, even for this series. The main issue I have with this film and this series in a whole is that this, over 5 films, or however many there is, it doesn't need that amount of time. This could have been at most a 3-film series, and you just find yourself watching these long, arbitrary conversations between characters talking about the same stuff they've been talking to about the last 5 films, and it's boring. It is boring watching these sort of characters who, for me personally, I'm not particularly invested in, just talk about the same old stuff again and again. And this film is really probably the most guilty of that. And there's no real surprises here. There's a particular character whose fate has been hinted at throughout the whole series and goes the way you'd probably expect, so it's not a big surprise. But of course, there's no surprises here about ultimately what happens. So I have to say, I'm fairly glad this series has now come to a close. I know it has its fans, and I think if you are a fan of the MYTHICA series and you have liked all these films, then you will like this film. It's very much in the same mould of the rest of the series, but I don't feel it's anything spectacular. Even if you found the series, I'd be hard pushed to say anyone that this is the favourite out of the series, to be quite honest. Disappointing end to what I think is a disappointing series. I hope Arrowstorm can maybe get back to a little bit more creativity and maybe make one film before they decide to make a whole bunch of sequels. They do some good stuff. They do some good films. I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more you know, something a bit different from them, basically. But this film, for me, was disappointing. But I didn't have massive expectations because I think the series is particularly good, in my opinion. But like I said, if you like this series, this one's not going to change your mind. It's very much the same sort of thing. But I challenge you, if you are a fan of this series, what is your where does this rank in the whole series to me? I like the last one the best. That was, I think, the best movie. But this one I found quite dull. Anyway, let us know in the comments section. I want to give this movie a 4 out of 10. It does look quite pretty, but visually I feel that that's pretty much it. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.